Hi, my name is Gibson. I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to parent for a secure attachment style child as well as a healthy child. Some really important basic needs that are, extremely necessary at the subconscious level to create healthy habits and dynamics for your child's future growth and development. So we will be launching a course on this, super exciting content, really in depth. We'll be launching it at the end of this summer. So again, if you want to reserve your early bird pricing, please visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com, type in your email and the courses that you want to reserve early bird pricing for. It's 25% off. So go on there, check it out, get connected, and take a look under the transformational course offerings. That's the list of the courses that we'll be offering very soon. So let's go into this. I think this is a really exciting topic. So first and foremost, it's really important that a child is given consistency. Okay, so consistent support, consistency and structure around meal times, around habits, routines. Consistency is huge, and the number one reason that consistency is so important is because trust is largely based on consistency and congruency. So, as an adult example, if somebody says to you every time you go visit their office, hey, I'm going to make you a coffee, and then they never make you a coffee or bring the coffee, you don't trust that person to make you or bring you a coffee, right? Because there's an inconsistency or an incongruency. And that is a major way that trust is developed. So if you're, feeding your child at all different times of the day, even if you're a woman and you're breastfeeding, if there isn't some kind of consistency and habitual routine, that child is actually losing trust with you at a subconscious level. So structure, order, consistency are extremely key, not just for the child's development, but for the trust between that caregiver and child. Next, presence. Okay, so presence is huge. I've done a lot of work with people under states of hypnosis or using implicit memory retrieval techniques, and clients will actually be able to bring up very specific early childhood memories where they were like a year or 2 years old and they're in a crib, and people will report to me all the time things like, oh, I can feel that my mother is sad and I can feel that my father's angry. And they're actually surfacing these subconsciously stored memories in these hypnotic states, and they're able to actually retrieve, they're able to sort of feel the emotional states of the people around them. And I see this all the time. I've actually personally had this experience myself under a state of hypnosis. And we are really clear when we are very young, before our logical thinking, analytical mind is really developed. We are really picking up on the emotions of the people around us. And so we can tell at a very, very young age if our parents or caregivers are present with us or not. And that has a massive impact on the way we build relationships and the way we feel safe and secure. So super important. The next thing, you really want to bring emotional stability. So step 3, I'm going to go through 9 or 10 different ones. You really want to be clear that you're bringing your best and most effective emotional state to your time with your child. Because if your child's picking up on all these really intense emotions and the fluctuations, and they're aware of this, if you are in a state of anxiety, panic, anger, frustration, and if that's how you show up when you come home from work, or, when you're spending that time with your child, or if you're rushing around, all of that energy is basically being transmitted. And there are 3 major ways that we get subconscious programs. Number 1, what we see repetitively. Number 2, what we hear repetitively. And number 3, what we have firsthand experiences of. So if you're modeling this anxious, nervous energy, or this anger or frustration or sadness, depression, disappointment, whatever it is, if you're modeling those emotional states to your child is picking up on that, and it's actually becoming a subconscious program, which then forms that child's emotional patterning later on in life. And just as a side note here, as I go through all these steps, this isn't to give parents, all of these, all this pressure and all these things all these targets or marks that they have to hit. This isn't about being perfect, but this is about having the awareness to use these tools and self-reflect and improve on the areas of your life that will really impact the relationship to you and your child later on, and also really impact your child's development, which could save you a lot of stress and energy in the future. So some key tools right now. So number 4, we really also want to form an emotional bond to the child. It's extremely important. So something I see all the time is sort of these pockets of hidden emotional neglect. And oftentimes kids who are dismissive avoidant or go through periods of emotional neglect and feel deprived or feel abandoned or have these intense core wounds, oftentimes they didn't have the emotional component sort of instilled in the environment and in the relationship between them and their parents. Their parents might have been extremely physical, like physically available, their food's on the table, they live in a nice home, they live in a good neighborhood, all these different things, and maybe mentally, intellectually available. They're being pushed at school, they're in a good school, they're having conversations, they're learning, they're being taught how to read, they've got a lot of support in that area. But if, sometimes the emotional component gets overlooked, and it's not because parents don't care, but oftentimes it's because they didn't have that nurtured in themselves. And so it's sort of something that's almost an unknown. And so it's often this sort of hidden missing ingredient, which is really, really important, because oftentimes the people who I see who are most struggling with depression in their adult lives actually suffered with some form of emotional neglect in childhood. So what does this really look like? Just to break this down for a moment. This means a few key things. It means, number 1, that if you sense, it's really important, let's put it this way, it's really important to have a sense of attunement to your child. So if you see that child is upset and you're noticing some of their upset, their sadness, that you go and you inquire and you provide comfort and you provide a space that they can share and express their emotions. And it's really important for emotional expression to be encouraged in a healthy context. So even if you can, at a very young age, teach your child, what are you feeling, and teach them the different emotions that they can express, they're actually staying connected to their emotions as opposed to repressing or dissociating, which again, usually comes out later in life in the form of depression, anxiety, addictive patterns of behavior, all kinds of stuff that we really want to prevent by creating really good, healthy subconscious programming at an early age. So again, this point being that we want to provide the emotional connection to our children, and that looking like providing comfort, being attuned, noticing their emotions, if they're happy, sad, encouraging their emotional expression in terms of asking them to speak about their emotions and actually express in language what types of emotions they're feeling and what their needs are. Because of the 3 ways we get programs, like we said, what we see, what we hear, and what we have firsthand experiences of, it can also be really valuable for a parent to lead by example. So you can express your emotions in terms of language and try to do it in a healthy form. This doesn't mean go vent and burden your child with all of your stuff. This means saying things like, hey, I felt a little bit stressed out this morning and I handled it this way, and I needed this, and so I did it that way. Really providing the emotions and the experience, and then the solution, and teaching that child that sort of problem solution format so that they start to experience their emotions as just feedback to go correct a problem, which really at the end of the day is what your emotions are there for. Number 6, we really don't want to make emotions bad. Okay, when a child is crying, we want to allow space, hold space for them to cry or have the experience, and then we want to encourage them. Hey, you're sad because you had emotions build up for periods of time, or something upset you, and this is feedback that there's something in you that has a need. What would that need be? And so we want to encourage the child to work through their emotions as opposed to just express their emotions forever without trying to find a solution to the problem. And also, even more importantly, we definitely don't want to encourage the child to repress their emotions, by shaming the child for crying or getting angry or getting frustrated or putting them in timeout or anything like that is just sort of festering future potentials of challenges to occur. So again, emotions are feedback that there's an internal problem that needs some kind of solution, and we want to start teaching that habitual way of looking at things. Number 7, and I really like this one, we want to allow children to, as soon as they can take responsibility for something, the parent stops doing it. Okay, so what this means is, like, the moment the child, for example, can tie their shoes, the parent doesn't need to be there, like, tying the shoes all the time. It's like, okay, as soon as the child got it the first time, and now they're responsible. It doesn't matter if we're rushing and we're late. It doesn't matter if, we're behind somewhere, going to be late to school. Like, the moment the child can take responsibility, you encourage them to take full responsibility for that activity. And so what you're doing is you're teaching that child that safe bonding and trust that they can rely on you and learn from you. But at the same time, you're teaching them responsibility, and you really want to positively reinforce when they take responsibility. So, lots of validation, lots of presence, lots of noticing, and oh wow, good job, and you great job tying your shoes. Like, a lot of positive reinforcement when the child's taking responsibility. And one element that's really popular in different methods of sort of conscious conditioning, which is the updated sort of system as opposed to this old school punishment reward system. Not saying that doesn't work sometimes or won't be used sometimes, but it's much less valuable to teach through fear, and much more valuable to teach through strategy and consequence and accountability and positive reinforcement. So one really important element is, again, when you're trying to condition from a more conscious perspective, to always provide positive reinforcement to things that you're trying to teach, and again, be solution oriented. Feed the solutions you're looking for. Don't punish for the problems that you're seeing. Okay, it's sort of like whatever we're fighting, if we're fighting the problem, whatever we fight, we feed. And so we want to make sure that we're going, okay, if this is a problem, what's the solution, and how do I get to that space? As opposed to focusing on the problem and punishing and creating all this fear and negativity. Because again, anything that we're repetitively exposed to becomes its own form of programming that this child will then deal with later. So number 8, really important to nurture a child's interests. So this means at a very young age, and I'll tell you why this is so important, because I see so many people in their adult lives, their interests were not nurtured, and they're really struggling to make decisions. It's sort of like they didn't get to make a lot of decisions in childhood, so their brain didn't even form that proper subconscious programming to feel like they can be accountable for their choices. It's almost like they delegated it out because the parents were too controlling and strict, and that manifests itself in adult life as like extreme indecisiveness. And also, if the child's interested or not nurtured, they have a hard time finding their life purpose, finding what they're passionate about. And this isn't always the case, but this is often what I see. So, positively reinforcing a child's interest, if it's a sport, if it's an activity, if it's a subject in school, even if it's not, what you think they should be doing, quote unquote, like, you still want to nurture the fact that you're trying to create the program of learning autonomy, independence, relationship to self-reflection, that passionate nature. All those different things are extremely important. And number 9, you want to do something. This is sort of 9, and I'm going to put in all these different parts here. You really want to set up an environment or create circumstances for the child that nurture their 6 basic human needs in a variety of formats. So for example, number 1, you want to nurture growth. So you want to have that child exposed to like a lot of stimulation, a lot of learning, a lot of opportunity to learn, to experience new things so that they can adapt and grow with these experiences. Number 2, the basic human need of significance. I find that when this need is not nurtured in a child, oftentimes they really hunger for this in their adult lives to the point where it can sometimes become unhealthy. So significance would be like providing this child with presence. This will really nurture that feeling of self-worth, providing that child with validation, noticing when they're growing, noticing when they're learning, positively reinforcing it. Good job. You're doing wonderful. That's super important for growth and development. Number 3, uncertainty. So really this is like novelty exploration, and I find that this is really important as well, like allowing your child to have their needs nurtured or their interests nurtured and supported gives them that sense of autonomy. They trust themselves to make decisions, they trust themselves to empower themselves, to take action, to take control over their life. So that need nurtured for autonomy, for freedom, for exploration, for novelty, being exposed to new environments and new things so that they can feel safe and comfortable there. Super important. Need number 4, certainty. So having, again, like we referred to earlier, that consistency, stability, habits, structure, order. Number 5, love and connection. So this sort of comes most effectively in the form of presence, warmth, affection, acceptance. It's really painful for a young child to feel judged because they're just trying to make their way in the world. And if you judge or shame, this can have really painful long-term consequences for a child's programming. And last but not least, contribution. So, one of the most effective ways I see this is if you can expose your child to things like sharing and positively reinforce it. Like if they're sharing their food with you, how great it is and how much you appreciate it, and showing them, because we have mirror neurons, right? So when we see joy and happiness, and we're especially sensitive to this at a young age, when we see joy and happiness because we shared or contributed something, we actually feel really positive emotion from that experience. And so you're sort of building in that programming for that child to build positive associations to contribution. So that was a very full video with lots of sort of key pieces, and I hope you're getting a lot of value out of these videos. Again, we're gonna have like a really in-depth course launching very shortly with all of it, with much more detail and worksheets and workbooks and checklists and all kinds of valuable resources. So please feel free to visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com to sign up for that course, or to just stay connected. Or if you have any personal inquiries, please feel free to email me at thais@personaldevelopmentschool.com. Thank you so much for watching.